Hey, it's top tier Jazmine Allure, and this is the Fans View podcast.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Fans View podcast. My guest on this episode, she has quickly climbed the ranks of the independent scene at just 23 years old and only 5 years into her career, has become what I would say one of the hottest unsigned names in professional wrestling. Please welcome to the show, Jazmine Allure. Jazmine, how are you doing this evening?
Hi. Hi, I'm doing good.
Uh,
Thank you for having me. I am 24 now, though.
24, excuse me. I knew that and had it written down,
Okay.
and of course.
You're
um,
good. You're good.
for first things first, where did you grow up and how did you find professional wrestling? Is it something you fell in love with as a child?
So I grew up most of my life, since I was born to the age of 12 in Orlando, Florida. And that's where I discovered wrestling. I was that little sister that would not leave her brother alone and wanted to do whatever he did. So he was watching wrestling and I decided to get into it at a very young age. I was like 4 or 5. I remember going to my first show, which was SmackDown. Um, so that was a lot of fun, just going up and like play wrestling with my brother. Then I moved to Mexico and I kind of grew out of it in a bit. I guess you never really do, but like I just
Yeah.
stopped watching it for a little bit. I was like in and out. And then the Four Horsewomen came and I was like, wow, like they are putting some badass matches. My dad took me to a CMLL show in Arena, Mexico in Mexico City. And that's really where I fell in love. And I was like, this is something I can do. And then I came back to the States, to Austin, and I started training here.
Yeah, so that was going to be my next question was who were some of your favorites, when you were growing up? It seems like you might have had an affinity towards the horsewomen. And when did this become more than just something you enjoyed watching and something you thought about maybe pursuing?
Yeah, so my favorites was like Rey Mysterio, Jeff Hardy. I loved Trish Stratus. That was my era. I was like 5 years old and she was like women's champion. And every WrestleMania she was on there. I did like AJ Lee too. I remember seeing her and being like, oh, she's like Hispanic, Latina. She's small like me. It was something cool to see on TV. The Four Horsewomen, of course. So yeah, really when like it became more than just like love. I mean, it's always like gonna be love, but like when my dad took me to that CMLO show in Mexico City, that's really where I was like, okay, I can do this. And I was at a point in my life where I was in college, but I was like, oh, like I don't know, this is not making me happy. I just want to do something that like I'm gonna enjoy and I'm gonna be happy and passionate about. And once I started training, that was it. That was like, this is love at first sight. You know how people say that about other people? I'm like, no, like that wrestling ring was love at first sight. And yeah, that's just how it started.
I love that. So you said you moved to Austin from Mexico. Where did you train?
Mm-hmm. At America's Academy of Pro Wrestling. So it's a little bit North Austin. I'm trained by Papa Don, Steve Orino. So yeah.
Okay. So I'm looking at your cage match statistics. You hit the ground running. When you broke into the business, you booked, you worked. Um how
Yeah.
hard do you find it? How hard do you find it to balance that road warrior mentality? Because obviously you want to be in the ring and you want to get better. But how do you balance that with having somewhat of a normal life with family and friends, relationships? And I know for you, you were in college at the time as well.
Yeah, it was really hard to balance like college. I also had like two jobs at the time. So I had college, two
Wow.
jobs, and I was training. And the thing, like it was kind of hard my first 2, 3 years of wrestling because I was doing all that. So I didn't really get to see my family because they still live in Mexico. So it's hard to like
Okay.
find time for family. I really like the first 2 years. I was like, I'm just sticking like wrestling's my priority, and like I will see you guys when I make it, kind of thing. Of course, like priorities change throughout the years, and I noticed like family is important. But yeah, I missed a lot of holidays, a lot of
Yeah.
birthdays, like Mother's Day, Father's Day. Like I was so committed. I was also broke, so I couldn't go back and visit. But I really like put all my energy in wrestling, and yeah, that. But I feel like that rewarded me now. I've been able to achieve
Yes.
everything that I have, and like go to places that I've been able to go. I wouldn't have been able to do that if I didn't put my all into it.
Yeah, yeah, and that's what I was gonna say. It's unfortunate, that you missed that family time, but I think it's definitely paid dividends because you have accelerated maybe your trajectory, and you've accomplished things in just a couple of years that some people don't accomplish ever. Which is actually something
Yeah.
that I want to talk about next. You've done a lot of work. I would say a lot of work with AEW. You've done some stuff with WWE. How different is it working for those two companies? Is there a big culture difference? Have you found?
Yes, that's a very interesting question. I loved both experience. AEW is kind of when I go back there, it's more like a homecoming to me in a way,
Yeah.
because like that's where I kind of started my career, and I know a lot of people there. So like whenever I go back, I'm like, good to see you. You catch up and stuff. Whereas WWE, I am very more like kind of starstruck, but I'm also like,
Yeah.
this is what I kind of grew up watching, and this is where I want to be, and this is like they're both different, but I like them both. They're both amazing experience. I haven't had a negative experience, which I'm very lucky, and I'm glad.
I'm so glad to hear that because I know at least one of the times that you worked with WWE, I believe it was a SmackDown taping, and you actually worked with Macy Estrella, Lacey Evans.
Mm-hmm.
She's actually been on the podcast, and I've had a chance to speak to her, and she's admitted herself that at that point in her career, she was kind of mentally and emotionally checked out and just kind of ready to move on. Did you pick up on any of that when you worked together, or was she still professional and easy to work with?
Yeah, she was very professional. I enjoyed my time. I'm also the type of person that like you give me anyone or whatever, like whatever you give me, I will make it work. And
Yeah.
the both times I wrestled for WWE, I go into the mentality of like, not a lot of people get to do this. People who grew up watching wrestling, not everyone's gonna step in a ring. So I enjoy the hell out of every opportunity that I get.
I love that. That attitude is definitely gonna bring you even further in the wrestling business. Um, then to backtrack a little bit to AEW, you said it was kind of your home and where you broke in. If I'm not mistaken, in my research, I saw that you debuted in 2020 and also worked for AEW in 2020. How crazy is it to have gone from not wrestling at all to wrestling on TV, in that quick of a time span?
It was like a pinch me moment, but it happened so fast that I just like I was like towards the end of the experience, I'm like, I just did that. It was so crazy. Like it seems like even a blur. But my trainer, and I think I also do this sometimes, it's like you either sink or swim.
Yeah.
So I like to just push myself and see if I sink or swim. And, luckily I didn't sink. But yeah, that's kind of like how I like going into stuff. And it was also like so exciting, to get an opportunity. Like, I'm not going to say no, like, I'm like, hell yeah, like we'll learn along the way.
Yeah. So has there ever been any thought or maybe any discussion? Obviously I'm not asking specifics, but maybe making AEW your full-time home? Has that ever been a topic that's been talked about?
I've wished, I've hoped, we'll see. Also WWE, like that's kind of my end goal too, like it's what I grew up watching. Um, the both times I've like wrestled there, I've had incredible experiences. I like my first match there, I cried, which I don't really cry in wrestling, but I definitely cried and shed tears. And I've always treated so well, and they're so nice, and the girls were so nice too, which you don't really know going into like a company you're not a part of how they're gonna treat you. But I
Yeah.
that was the best experience of my career. So that will always be my goal is, WWE, of course.
So, also in my research, I saw that you actually spent a little bit of time in WoW, the women wrestling promotion. Um,
Yeah.
what was that experience like being so drastically different from the WWE and AEW? In the sense that it's a little, maybe a little more cartoony. Maybe that's the right word. A lot more character based. What was that experience like?
So it was a little bit more different for me than what other people have experienced there. I was brought in by AJ Mendez.
Mm-hmm.
She was the one that brought me in, and it was my first contract. I was 22, so I was like 2 years in, and I was still learning. I was the youngest one in the whole roster. And I remember having a conversation with AJ. I was like, I'm not like a very character hokey persona. I can
Yeah.
be extra, but I'm not, that's not really how I wrestle. I like to like do more moves in the ring and like, show more attitude, but I'm not like this hokey person. And she was like, that's
Yeah.
totally fine. Like, not everyone has to be this hokey person. You can just be a good wrestler. And my character on WoW was me. If you look at my intro, it was like I'm a student and I'm a wrestler and I'm supporting my family. My name changed, but it was me. Just a little
Right.
bit more extra in a sense, but it was still me. And I love that AJ was there to help me with that because I was having issues. I was like, I want to come to WoW because, I want to get better, but I also am not this kind of person. And she was so understandable, like understanding of that. So that was great.
Was there maybe a competitor or a peer that worked in WoW with you that you kind of maybe would say you learned the most from, aside from AJ?
Ooh, yes, I wrestled, and I'm probably gonna say their indie name because I've also like became friends with these people. So like Everly Rivera and like Johnny Robbie, I met them at WoW, and I remember wrestling. We weren't even friends, but I remember wrestling them, and I was like, they bring out the best in me. And then we just became friends after that. So yeah, definitely them.
Is would you say that's kind of what led to your departure from WoW? Is maybe you not being so super into the character based work, that they're known for?
Um, at the time, I just had other opportunities that I wanted to do and other goals, and I wanted to pursue that. Because when you're with WoW, you're exclusive. I'm not sure about now, but when
Right.
I was there, you can't do other TV, you can't do other companies, and my goal was to do WWE or more AW. I never wrestled for Ring of Honor before at that time, and I got to wrestle on their pay-per-view. Um, and then I also wanted to wrestle for CMLL, which is the company that
Right.
originally was the one that was like interested me to become a wrestler. So I got to
Yeah.
do that in October. So I just like I wanted to do other stuff that and I didn't want to be limited, but the door is always open, so who knows.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. So, how would you compare? Because I actually had Madison Maxwell on the other night, and I want to ask you the same question I asked her: is what is the difference between working WoW, which is obviously studio wrestling, as opposed to maybe the independent scene where you're live and people are there paying their money to see wrestling? Like, how different are those two experiences?
Yeah, you just kind of have to know where you're at and like what kind of crowd you're going for. WoW is TV.
Yeah.
So you kind of have to wrestle a different style. And on the independents, it's crazy because you will travel the whole US, Canada, Mexico, and the crowd varies. So you want to like learn how you can pop the crowd in every city and every
Yeah,
state. You know, you're wrestling different people who wrestle different styles. Whereas WoW, it's more of a one style because, you know, everyone's trained the same in a way. Um, yeah, it's very different, but I try to still be Jazmine Allure in both. You know, like you'll
yeah,
watch Jennifer Flores on WoW, and you'll be like, yeah, you know, that's Jazmine. You know, she just changed her name. So I try to be the same because you know I just that's my wrestling style.
absolutely. Do you prefer, I mean, take WoW out of it. Do you prefer the independent wrestling vibe to the studio wrestling vibe?
You are like you can be more creative on the independence. You know, you
Yeah,
can do more whatever what you want to do. You know, you're not like, oh, I'm doing whatever the higher ups want or whatever the boss
right.
wants. You know, you're doing what you want to do, and you know, it's your art. You know,
Yeah,
so I do like the independence. I feel like it's a little bit more fun, but I will say, you know, TV is TV. You know, everybody wants to be on
absolutely.
TV.
Absolutely. Do you have like some favorite workers that that you work with maybe consistently on the independent? Are there a couple names that come to
um,
mind?
yes. You know, Johnny, she's one of my favorites as well. Johnny Robbie, she's doing New Japan. She's super great. Who else? I've worked with Lila Doom. I don't know if you know her, but she's a
Mhm.
Cali girl and she's also a lot of fun to work with. So yeah, those are like the ones I've had a couple matches and I'm like, this is so fun. It's so easy.
So, now that we're into 2025, obviously we're still super early. What are some of your goals going into this year, like some tangible goals that you want to look to achieve?
I would love to go more international and I just want to wrestle more. I say that, but I feel like this year I'm definitely going to be wrestling more. I just want to get out more, you know, like wrestle in more states, wrestle internationally, probably like a tour. We'll see, you know, an international tour. I would love to do that.
Well, we definitely, when you're not international, we got to get you back here to the Carolinas.
Yes, yes.
Um, so this is a bonus question that I can ask everybody, that I'm interviewing right now because it is Royal Rumble season. So I got to ask you from a fan perspective, do you have a pick for the 25 Royal Rumble?
So for the women's, I have like prediction. I feel like Charlotte's gonna come back, and I
Mm-hmm.
feel like she's gonna win it. And then men's, it's Cena's last year,
Yes,
so I
yes.
just think I have to give it to him.
It's got to be Cena. It has to be Cena.
Yeah,
And who would think that my demographic would be clamoring for John Cena to win the Royal Rumble? We've been booing him for a decade and a half.
right. Yeah.
But you don't know what you got till it's gone, I guess.
I was just gonna say that. That's literally what I thought. Yeah.
Yeah, we didn't appreciate what we had. Um, so this is where I kind of try to get deep with my guests. And I want you to rack your brain for this because I know it's not an easy one. But do you have a favorite piece of advice, or maybe a piece of advice that kind of resonates with you? Not
hmm
necessarily wrestling related, life related, just a piece of advice that really resonates with you.
So I remember AJ telling me one time the energy that you put out to the universe is the same one you're gonna receive. So I just try to be positive about everything and just try to be the bigger person because whatever I put out is whatever I'm gonna get. So I think that in general, like wrestling life, that just has helped me a lot.
I love that. And how important is it for you, excuse me, as a Latina woman, how important is it for you to be a role model, to other little girls and women that kind of look up to you and would love to be in the position you're in?
Oh man, it's so important. And that's really like what I've been working for, you know, representation. You know, growing up, I never saw a Mexican champion, like a female Mexican, obviously Eddie
Yeah.
Guerrero, you know. but I never saw a Mexican champion. And I remember when I broke into the business and I saw Thunder Rosa, I was like, oh, she's Mexican American. She's like repping it. She's so proud of who she is. Like, that was what I wanted to, because all the little girls love her and they look up to her, and I looked up to her. And also, like, AJ, you know, she's Latina, and I just want to be that for my generation. But also, like, back home in Mexico, I come from a town where, like, the only way out is you gotta go to school, you gotta get a job, maybe two jobs, you know? Like, it's very, there's so much poverty, and, you know, a lot of people don't really think they're gonna make it out of the town. So I want to be that representation of, like, hey, like, you can, you know, like, you can do whatever you want to do as long as you actually believe in yourself, which is so cliche, but I had so many people, like, be like, you're so small, like, you know, you're not gonna make it, you're not gonna, like, wrestle for WWE, you're not gonna make a living out of it. And here I am, you know, like, I never stopped believing in myself. And I think that's really what helped me. So it's so important to, like, just keep going, because there's always someone watching.
Yeah. So what would you say if you know if a little girl comes to you? Do you have a piece of advice, you know, for women and little girls that might want to pursue this?
Yeah, literally just never stop believing in yourself, because the whole world won't, if they don't believe in you, but you do, you will do whatever you want to do, you know, you will achieve anything. So, yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love that. And for my last and final question here, it's the big one. What does, obviously you're a young woman, you're still relatively new in the wrestling business despite everything that you've accomplished. What does success, what does the term success mean to you? Is it necessarily working for a three-letter company, or just in general? What does success mean to you?
Success for me, personally, if I am financially stable where I can build my parents a home in Mexico, and also happiness, you know, like, you can have all the championships and you can work for the best company, but if you're not happy, like, is it really, like, success? So I will keep wrestling as long as it makes me happy. I truly believe this is my happiness, so I will be doing this for a long time. But as long as my parents are, like, good in Mexico and I am doing what I love, that is success to me.
I love that's such a beautiful answer. Well, Jazmin, where can people see you? Like, we've gotten to talk to you here for a few minutes here on the podcast. Now people want to go out and they want to watch you work. Where can they see you? How can they get a hold of you?
Yeah, so all my social media handles are all the same, at Jazmine Allure, JazminAllure. And catch me at my next show, January 18th, where I defend both of my beautiful belts, the Hurricane and Ladies Night Out championships.
I love that. Well, thank you so much, Jazmin, for coming on the show. We definitely don't want this to be a one and done. I would love to have you on again. Maybe when you get some more hardware and you got some more big things cooking up, because I'm sure it won't be long.
For sure. For sure, for sure. Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right, guys, until next time, this has been the Fans View Podcast. Don't forget, call your mom.
If you haven't liked or subscribed, you're going to be joking me.